Hey guys, Non-Zero here, bringing you today the draft for the Pittsburgh Celesteelas for the Discord GBA. So the Pittsburgh Celesteelas are a new franchise. I'm just getting into the draft league format. I thought it would be pretty fun to involve myself in some drafts after I've been following some of the larger drafts like the GBA and the UCL, NPA, that sort of thing for a while. So the Discord GBA is kind of a standard draft. So there are no tiering. It was just a free draft. You could draft up to 1 mega, and then you could also draft up to 1 mon that you declared to be your Z captain. In other words, the mon that could each week be equipped with a Z crystal of whatever type you wanted. Let's go ahead and get into my picks. My round 1 pick is something of a controversial pick. It's a mon that a lot of people consider to be not necessarily the best round 1 choice, but I don't know. I thought that this is just such a good mon in draft league format, at least on paper, and so I wanted to try it out. I wanted to test and see if it really is as good as it looks. So this mon right here is Tapu Koko. So Tapu Koko hits really hard and really fast. It doesn't have the highest special attack, right? Base 95, but it sets up the electric terrain, meaning that it's boosting its electric type attacks by 50% automatically. Plus, if you slap some power boosting item like a life orb or choice specs on there, it's going to be hitting it incredibly hard, and it's going to be outspeeding everything, barring, like Excelgor and some other just absurdly fast mons. This thing outspeeds basically the entire metagame, especially if you slap a choice scarf on it, and it has a decent move pool, along with its electric stabs and Thunderbolt, Discharge, Volt Switch. This thing also gets access to U-turn for momentum. It gets Grass Knot for some nice coverage. You usually can put something like a Hidden Power Ice on it. Get your other stab in there with Dazzling Gleam. If you want to run a physical or mixed move pool, this thing has access to Brave Bird. So I think this is just a really cool mon in general for the draft league. Being able to hit so fast and so hard. And with the choice scarf on there, I think it's one of the best late game cleaners. It's also a great mid game pivot with its 2 ways of generating momentum, Volt Switch and U-turn. So my second pick was a mon that I thought was just really great in draft league format. I've really loved how this mon has performed when I've been watching it being used on other people's teams. It's also my favorite mon of all time, so I really wanted to try it out. And this mon right here is Infernape. So Infernape is super versatile, right? This thing has a massive move pool. It's got Gunk Shot, it's got Stone Edge, it's got Earthquake, it's got U-turn, it's got Thunder Punch, it's got Stealth Rocks, Slack Off if you want to run a defensive set. I mean, there's just so many things this guy can do. It can set up with a Swords Dance or Nasty Plot. It has priority with Mach Punch or Vacuum Wave. And it has strong dual stabs on the special and the physical side. You got Focus Blast, Fire Blast, or you got Flare Blitz in close combat. When I drafted this mon, my sort of intention was to make it my Z Crystal user, because, Acid Downpour Gunk Shot coming from this thing is just going to obliterate fairies. And in general, it's if you have, say, a bulky water type that you think can take this thing on, then you're gonna get Bloom Doom Grass Knotted. It's just got such a huge move pool that can pack tech coverage for all of its checks, for all the things that thought they were checks. And it also has U-turn to get on out of there. And with pretty decent speed and workable 107 base special attack and attack, I think this mon is just so good in the draft league format. And so of course I was considering this to be a main candidate for my Z Crystal user. As it turns out, I end up not picking this as my Z Crystal user. And so I'll talk about that a bit later, but I just thought that this mon was a really cool mon to use in draft league format, so I wanted to pick it up in round 2. So round 3, obviously at this point I have something of a ground weakness, so I wanted a mon that could deal with ground types pretty efficiently, take on most ground types that I would be facing. The mon I ended up going up with was Mega Gyarados. So in regular form, Gyarados takes on most ground types because of Intimidate and just because of naturally resisting, obviously being immune to ground type attacks. resisting steel type attacks, that sort of thing. It is weak to rock in regular form, but it hits ground types really hard with waterfall. I think Mega Gyarados is just a really good win con because Mold Breaker is an ability that allows it to OHKO mons that have the ability Sturdy, can knock stuff like Mimikyu through its disguise, it can break through Storm Drain mons like, Cradily and Gastrodon, which would normally try to take this thing on. And it's an excellent win con, and that if the opponent doesn't have something healthy that can, check a +2 Mega Gyarados, then they just kind of lose the match if you can get Gyarados in safely and DD up once or twice. So that's Mega Gyarados. And of course it has two excellent abilities in Intimidate and Moxie before Mega Evolving, and then it gets access to that Mold Breaker after it Mega Evolves. With Earthquake to hit electric types, this thing is very capable of just sweeping through teams. Alright, so for my round 4 pick, I had said earlier how I thought that Infernape was going to be my Z-Crystal user. But this mon was still on the table at round 4, and I was so surprised to see it still on the table, so I just had to pick it up. And this is the mon that ended up being my Z-Crystal user. And this mon is Mew. So, the genetic experiment itself. So Mew is such the versatile mon. Like, I was talking about how Infernape had a huge move pool. I mean, Mew has access to every TM in any generation that ever existed. Its move pool is just massive, and this thing is impossible to prepare for that reason. I mean, maybe it's running a utility set with Knockoff, Defog, Stealth Rocks, and Roost, or something like that. But maybe it's running an offensive set. Maybe it, you switch into your Dark or Steel type, and you get bopped by an all-out pummeling Focus Blast. Maybe you switch into your Fairy Wall, and you get bopped by an Acid Downpour Gunk Shot, I mean, this thing, with the potential to run a Z-Crystal, this can basically be made to beat any mon in the format, which is just crazy. I mean, you can even use a Twinkle Tackle Dazzling Gleam set if you're worried about like certain mons that are weak to Fairy. This thing just, because it gets access to all the TMs, and so then it gets basically a strong Z move for every type. And with all base 100 stats, you can make this thing bulky, you can make this thing offensive, you can make this thing capable of, nasty passing or sword stance passing. It's just so hard to prepare for because it can do any of those things. And because of its stats, you can tailor it to do any of those things pretty well. And so I think this is just a monster in Draft League format, and that's why I picked it up round 4 while I could, because I knew that if I did not pick this thing up, it was going to get drafted pretty soon. Alright, and so round 5. So at this point, I have something of electric weakness, especially because I'm setting up electric terrain for my opponents. So I needed a decent ground type. And all of the standard ground types are usually good in Draft League format, like Landorus, like Nidoqueen, and a couple of others had already been drafted. So I went with what I thought was the best thing still on the table, and I think something that gave me another pretty good win con, and that is Zygarde 50%. So Zygarde 50% is maybe not the best answer to electric types, or the best switch into electric types, because it does have that 4 times weakness to ice, and a lot of these fast electric types pack Hidden Power Ice, or some type of ice coverage, to deal with ground types. But I think Zygarde 50% is fairly good for this team anyways. It does give me a Dragon towards my Dragon Fairy Steel Core, of course the fairy being Tapu Koko, and it gives me a nice electric immunity, some very strong priority with extreme speed, and another win con, another Dragon Dance win con. So if I can use one of Mega Gyarados and Zygarde to wear down sort of the opponent's physical walls and physical answers, then the other one may be able to sweep later. And so that's pretty cool. And this thing is also kind of like Mega Gyarados, in that some of the things that would normally answer it Like, you might think, based on typing alone, that something like Togekiss or Celesteela would be a good answer to this thing. But that's not the case, because Thousand Arrows ignores the flying type. So it's a ground type move that ignores the immunity to flying type. Basically knocks the opponents down, hits them while they're in the air with the Thousand Arrows, and so it's a really cool sweeper, because Thousand Arrows is suddenly a move that doesn't have any immunities. It has not too many resistances, only like bulky grass types basically, and that sort of thing can take this thing on. So for my next pick, I wanted sort of a bulky grass type to be able to take on water types, because I don't have the best switch-ins to like offensive water types right now. And Tangrowth was a mon I'd been looking at. I thought it'd be great for the team, but it was picked up in the previous round. So I went with the thing that was still on the table that I thought would fit the team best. And so this is the mon with Mew stats. It is Shaman. So Shaman's pretty cool. It has some nice utility in Healing Wish and Aromatherapy. It's a great status absorber as well with Natural Cure. And it hits pretty hard in its own right with Seed Flare. Its coverage isn't the best. It has access, I think, to Dazzling Gleam, Earth Power, and maybe a couple other special attacks. And of course, with those Mew-like stats, you can tailor to take defensive hits, take specially defensive hits. It has Leech Seed, Synthesis, Toxic, so it can kind of be sort of a mon that stalls things out. In general, it's just a pretty bulky grass type that I think is going to be a solid switch into the offensive water types that I'm worried about. And so I think, yeah, Shaman's pretty good for this team. It is kind of passive. There are mons that can switch into this thing with like no issue. Stuff like Karam Black can take anything. It's not taking much from a Dazzling Gleam. But I think with Healing Wish and with Seed Flare potentially getting those Spadef drops, and with Leech Seed, this mon has plenty of tools to prevent it from being just totally passive. And so I think it's a good completion to my Fire Water Grass core. Alright, so the next mon was a mon that I drafted. I sort of had a couple of options to go from here, right? So Mew and Shaman can both be made pretty defensive, and in fact, Mew I think is kind of commonly run as something that's defensive, something that gets rid of hazards, sets them up, and that utility set that I was mentioning I think is most commonly run on Mew in the draft league. But with the existence of Z Crystals, I kind of wanted to free up some room for Mew to be offensive, and so I wanted to draft some bulk, some mons that could take some hits that I could use as my switch-ins to my opponent's threats. And there was a core still on the board that I really wanted to draft, and I ended up being able to draft it. So my round 7 pick is the first mon in this core, and that is Skarmory. So Skarmory gives me a just defensive wall. This thing takes defensive hits with its base 140 defense just so well as having an awesome typing that's just immune to ground, resists a lot of physical hits, and just takes physical hits so very well. It also gets up hazards, has spikes and stealth rocks, has Roost, has Defog, has Toxic, has Taunt, has Whirlwind. So this mon, it can avoid opponents setting up on it, and it can also just get up hazards pretty reliably, remove hazards pretty reliably. All in all, I just thought this was a great mon for the team. And I think this late in the format, honestly, it was pretty cool that it was still on the board. There were 12 teams, by the way, so there weren't 16 teams in this format, which explains some of how all these broken mons are still around this late in the format, but still, I thought that Skarmory was an awesome pick for round 7. And so the other mon of my core, I have something that can take hits from the physical side. I want something that can take some special hits. And this guy can take serious special hits. and I'm talking about Gudra. Okay, so Gudra, with a base 150 special defense, if you invest in HP and you invest some in special defense and you slap an assault vest on this thing, then it doesn't care. It doesn't care about the type chart. I mean, you can have a super effective hit and it's still gonna just bounce off if it's from the special side. So Gudra's a mon that can basically just switch into any special attacker and proceed to threaten them out with something from its move pool, because it gets a pretty decent move pool. It gets access to flamethrower, ice beam, sludge wave. Obviously, you can drop Dracos. It has decent offenses as well. I think it has a 110 special attack and a 100 attack. It also gets access from the physical side to stuff like Earthquake and Power Whip. So you can run a mix set. You can run this thing more offensive if you don't need the Spadef wall for that week. But overall, I thought the Skarmdra core, Skarmory and Gudra, was just a really good core in Draft League, because it means that your opponent has to prepare for something that can break both of these mons down. It has to bring something that can break down Skarmory, it has to break something that can break down Gudra, and it has to keep both of those mons healthy. Because at this point, with Skarmory, I had completed my Dragon, Steel Fairy, and Fire, Water, Grass cores, and so I was just sort of drafting mons that covered holes on my team, and it gave me the bulk that I wanted. And so I think with Skarmory and Gudra, I now have all the bulk that I want. And so for these next couple of picks, I'm just bringing some offensive threats that I think can help my team out in general. And so for round 9, I wanted something that could hit from the special side and hit from the special side fast. So I already have Tapu Koko as something that hits, something that's sort of like a special attacking win con. But I wanted another special attacker that could hit hard and fast. And a mon that was still around that can do just that is my boy Gengar. Now, of course, Gengar getting a bit worse this generation due to losing Levitate and picking up Cursed Body. It is still a monster with very, very hard-hitting Sludge Waves and Shadow Balls and Focus Blast if you're feeling good. This mon, I think, is just pretty good in Draft League format in general. It's a good cleaner, especially if you run Choice Scarf Gengar. And of course, being a poison type, it also gives me something that can suck up Toxic Spikes if I need that to happen. It's also a ghost type, so it's a spin blocker. So if hazards are really important, I can use this thing as a switch into rapid spinners. And so I thought this mon was a cool addition for the team. Probably not something I'm bringing necessarily every week, but if my opponent doesn't have the best answers to the combination of Ghost and Poison Stab, and Gengar definitely is a cool pick. Alright, so the next mon I drafted was Swellow. So Swellow is a win con, another sort of special win con, or it can be a physical win con. You can run Flame Orb Guts or Choice Spec Scrappy. And it's super fast. It's 125 base speed. And if the opponent's team is weakened, then this thing can just clean things up so effectively. Like Choice Spec Scrappy Boom Burst, especially with the increase in special attack this generation that Swellow got, is just a really great move to spam late game when things are weakened. You know, if you've gotten up hazards and everything's around 60%, and this mon just has a field day. It takes things out, and also just having this on my draft. If my opponent doesn't bring a bulky rock or a bulky steel type, then they have some serious trouble with Swellow. So this also just sort of restricts the opponent's team building, which I think is pretty useful. Of course, being flying type, it gives me another immunity to ground, which I didn't actually have other than Skarmory and Gyarados pre-Mega. So that's also pretty cool. Although, to be honest, you're not switching Swallow into basically anything unless you're 100% certain that it's a ground type attack coming out. You're not switching Swallow into anything. But Swallow can be really effective for cleaning late game, and so that's why I ended up drafting this mon. Once again, probably not something I'm going to be bringing most weeks, but certain teams, if they're not prepared for Swallow, this mon can really put in the work. And for my last pick, it was something. This was kind of like round 4, where I just saw this on the board. I was so surprised it was still on the board, and it fit my team pretty well. So I just had to pick it up. And that mon is Bisharp. So Bisharp, well, it gives me a way to punish defoggers, right? With Defiant, its attack increases by 2 stages when it gets hit with a defog because of the evasion drop. But more than that, it's just a really, really strong user that has access to Stab, Sucker Punch. Of course, Sucker Punch got a bit of a nerf this generation, but it still hits really, really hard, especially after a Swords Dance. I had some good priority in this team so far with Infernape and Zygarde, but this Bisharp just gives me, another mon with priority, and some really strong priority at that. After a Swords Dance, Sucker Punch is doing massive damage to all sorts of things. And of course, with really strong stabs, Knockoff and Iron Head, this spawn in general is just a really hard hitter, and it's not too frail either. It has some decent defensive, so it can stick around for a while. Once again, I was really surprised to see this thing still around at round 11, but I think it fits the team pretty well. Also giving me another Steel type and an immunity to Psychic that doesn't rely on having already Mega'd. So that's my draft. I'm pretty excited about how this draft is going to go. It's going to be an 11 round, just round robin draft league with potentially playoffs in the end. And the draft has already started, so I'm actually recording this a week into the draft, already having played my first 2 matches. So I'll probably be uploading like postmortems of those and what my teams were and how those battles went. But I really feel cool about this team. I think this team has all the tools to do really, really well. And there are just like so many threats on this team that my opponent has to prepare for. They have to prepare for a Mega Gyarados. They have to prepare for things to break down my bulkier mons. They have to try to prepare for Mew, but that's like not really something you can do. And all in all, I just really like how this draft turned out, and I'm looking forward to using it in the league. So yeah, I think that's all for today, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.